Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Juzi had already felt that something was amiss when the Ice Bear King had transformed into an icy meteor. She had realized that Huo Yuhao was no longer on its shoulder after it had turned into a meteor. However, Elder Su had been completely focused on Obai's massive body and powerful aura. He had totally forgotten about the deadly opponent he was up against. The bright blue light instantly reached Elder Su the moment it had appeared before everyone's eyes. On top of that, it was able to determine exactly where Elder Su would try to dodge. Huo Yuhao's attack was built on his ability to predict Elder Su's thoughts and actions. After Elder Su's head was penetrated by the light, there was no chance of him surviving. Juzi closed her eyes as sadness and pain overwhelmed her heart. She had lost another valuable subordinate. This meant that she had already lost 2 Class 9 Soul Engineers. This was only the 7th round. If he were actually able to win all 10 rounds, it meant that Huo Yuhao would be taking 3 more Class 9 Soul Engineers from her army. No, I can't let it go on like this. Even if the army's morale suffers, I have to make sure we don't lose any more Class 9 Soul Engineers. At this instant, Juzi knew that she had been duped by Huo Yuhao right from the start. Even though she was a very scheming person, she had still fallen prey to his ploy. It was now obvious that Huo Yuhao had used himself as bait to initiate this challenge. However, Juzi had forgotten how people from the Shrek Academy were the best when it came to one-on-one battles. Without their linked defensive soul tools or linked offensive soul tools, soul engineers did not possess much of an advantage against soul masters of a similar cultivation during one-on-one battles. This advantage was something that all of them, including Juzi, had taken for granted after their previous victories. Juzi closed her eyes before sighing guiltily. She said, "Let's admit defeat." "No, Marshal. We have not lost yet. We are willing to take him on." After seeing Elder Su die, the other Class 9 Soul Engineers were now extremely furious. This was because Elder Su was usually the friendliest one among them. After watching 2 of their comrades die, the fear in their hearts had been taken over by rage. "I have already said it. We are going to admit defeat. This is an order." Juzi suddenly opened her eyes and exclaimed furiously, "I can't watch all of you die like this. We have made a mistake right from the beginning. We should never have agreed to fight one-on-one with people from Shrek Academy. We have been tricked. Now that we have lost, we must admit defeat. I will bear all of the consequences. Spread my orders and get the army to retreat immediately." As she spoke, Juzedai turned around as she strode towards the Sunmoon Empire's army camp. Her voice was also transmitted by a sound-amplifying soul tool. "Huo Yuhao, I admit that we have lost this time. However, our battle has only just begun. I really hope that you will be this lucky the next time around. Everyone from the Sunmoon Empire, retreat now." The powerful Soul Engineers and the Soul Engineer legions from the Sunmoon Empire started to retreat slowly. As the rage in their hearts started to fade away, the Class 9 Soul Engineers started to feel relieved that they did not have to fight that frightening young man. Even though it looked as though he was pretty close to his limits, they knew that Huo Yuhao still had Obai around. In addition, they did not know what other trump cards he might be hiding up his sleeves. Hence, this was a challenge no one would willingly accept. After all, we all only have one life. A faint light was sparkling around Huo Yuhao as he rapidly absorbed the ice-type elements in the air to replenish what he had lost during the battle. In fact, he had only managed to survive till now because of the powerful regenerative ability granted by his yin-yang complement soul cores. He had heard Juzi's voice very clearly, and was a little disappointed to know that they had given up. After all, he really did possess more trump cards. If not for all of these trump cards he had hidden up his sleeve, he would never have proposed this challenge. In fact, Huo Yuhao was still holding onto the ring that had belonged to the Legion commander of the Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion. He knew well enough that there were plenty of stationary soul cannon shells in it, including several Class 9 ones. If he were really forced into a corner and caught in a life-threatening situation, Huo Yuhao would not hesitate to use these stationary soul cannon shells and expose the fact that he had killed the Legion commander of the Imperial Dragon's Soul Engineer Legion. At the end of the day, those were Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells. Regardless of whether they were used against the Sunmoon Empire's Soul Engineer Legions, or their Class 9 Soul Engineers, they would definitely hurt his opponents. At the very least, they would be able to buy him enough time to rest up and recover the energy he had expended. Huo Yuhao could still remember the humongous stationary soul cannon shell launcher teacher, Xian, had designed specifically for her by very clearly. That toy would definitely be able to allow him to launch multiple Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells. Zhu Zi was indeed very smart. At the same time, she had the gumption and courage to make difficult decisions. To be honest, Huo Yuhao was no longer afraid of revealing the fact that he had killed the Legion commander of the Imperial Dragon's Soul Engineer Legion. After all, he had already killed 2 transcendent Doluor from the Holy Ghost Church, and injured Zhongli Wu. At the same time, he had managed to save Ma Xiaotao. Under such circumstances, the Holy Ghost Church must have been weakened tremendously. Even if the Sunmoon Empire were to continue to receive help from them, they would not be much of a threat. Hence, whether he was able to make them the scapegoat was no longer that important. The most important thing was to kill as many Class 9 Soul Engineers from the Sunmoon Empire as possible. If more of them were to die, there would be fewer powerful individuals who could pin Shrek Academy down. That would then be a huge success for the Academy. As he watched the Soul Engineer Legion's retreat, Huo Yuhao took in a deep breath. At the end of the day, the place he was currently waiting at was not safe. It would also be better for him to return to Shrek City before he began his recovery. Just when he was about to jump down from Bai's body, an extremely peculiar sensation suddenly swept across his body. It was as though someone was trying to choke him. Shit! Huo Yuhao immediately activated his yin-yang complement soul cores, as he tried to break free from this sensation. However, it was already too late. His current ability paled in comparison to his ability when he was at his peak. Black streaks of energy started to evaporate from the icy war god's armor as a black figure formed behind him. A matte black dagger also formed before it was suddenly thrust at Huo Yuhao's back. At this instant, Huo Yuhao's entire body was sealed. He was completely immobilized. There was no way he could avoid the dagger. Then, a loud scream suddenly echoed in the air at this critical moment. Following which, a streak of purple gold instantly appeared before Huo Yuhao, almost as though it had teleported there. Nonetheless, Huo Yuhao's body was still stabbed by the black dagger. However, another figure had also appeared behind his back. She was none other than Tang Wuong, whose entire body was now radiating an intense purple gold glow. Right after Zhu Zi had announced their retreat, Tang Wuong was the first person to rush forward from Shrek Academy's side. After all, she was the one who understood Huo Yuhao's current situation best. When she saw how he was losing his balance on Bai's shoulder, she knew that he was definitely not acting this time round. He must have expended too much energy and sustained injuries. Hence, she wanted to be there for her man at the first moment to protect and treat him. When the black figure started to form behind Huo Yuhao's back, Tang Wuong was already less than 100 meters from him. At that instant, she ignited her soul power and used their martial soul fusion skill to appear right behind Huo Yuhao's back. Huo Yuhao and Tang Wuong had 4 martial soul fusion skills in total. Their last one was the solitary dance amidst the frost, raiment of light. This was a skill that allowed both Huo Yuhao and Tang Wuong to fuse their powers to unleash a stronger fighting power. When either of them executed this skill, the powers they possessed would draw both of them closer. Tang Wuong had used this skill along with her teleportation ability to attach herself to Huo Yuhao's body. When the dagger was about to pierce both of them, Tang Wuong was able to separate Huo Yuhao from her on time. She had used her body to block the dagger for Huo Yuhao. After releasing a grunt, Tang Wuong's body suddenly released an unbelievably powerful aura. The purple gold light she was emitting made her look like a purple gold sun behind Huo Yuhao. Its intense radiant aura instantly caused the black energy to surge violently, and no longer be able to attack Huo Yuhao's body. Huo Yuhao was finally able to move again. When he turned around to find that Tang Wuong had been stabbed in the chest, he felt as though his mind was about to explode. He immediately extended his arm to bring Tang Wuong into his embrace. Huo Yuhao released a deafening howl as he slammed his right fist outwards in the direction of the black figure. It was apparent that the black figure was a physical manifestation of the death god's power. This power originated from the death god demon puppet. Yes, Zhongli Wu had never fled from where they had fought. In fact, he had planted his powers on Huo Yuhao's body in advance. Even Huo Yuhao's spiritual detection was not able to pick it up. The power of the death god was only activated when Huo Yuhao was at his weakest and most relaxed state. After all, Zhongli Wu's targets had always been Huo Yuhao and Bai. It was now clear that the leader of the Holy Ghost Church had made alternative plans all along. At this instant, an image silently formed behind Huo Yuhao's back. Tang Wuong could see very clearly that the image was of a young man with long golden hair. Even though the young man had a smile on his face, Tang Wuong could not help but notice how the man's pupils were radiating different colored lights. One of his eyes was a black vortex, while the other was a white vortex. This gave him an extremely peculiar look. A very special aura started to form on Huo Yuhao's body. The fist he had punched out was originally radiating a golden light. However, while it was on its way to hit the black figure, the light it was giving off instantly transformed into a black and white vortex of light. Boom! When the light of Huo Yuhao's fist slammed into the black image, the image tried to resist it. However, the golden-haired man behind Huo Yuhao suddenly emitted an overwhelming radiance, as the vortex on Huo Yuhao's fist released a mystical power. Tang Wuong could sense the powerful melancholy and sadness radiating from the vortex on Huo Yuhao's fist. Following which, the black image was shredded to pieces by the vortex before it vanished into thin air. In a dense outgrowth 5 kilometers from where Huo Yuhao was, Zhongli Wu released a loud grunt as he spat blood out from his mouth. His face had become paler than before. This time, he had really sustained serious injuries. Even though his beast spirit had fused with him, it was not a complete fusion. Only a part of its spirit had fused with Zhongli Wu's body. Zhongli Wu had actually left his martial soul true body on Huo Yuhao. In fact, he had left his martial soul, the death god demon puppet, with Huo Yuhao. Zhongli Wu had felt that it was the best time to strike when Huo Yuhao had been weakened and had lowered his guard. His death god demon puppet was definitely more than met the eye. Even though it had been forced out of Huo Yuhao's body, it was still able to attach itself to him with the help of dead spirits. To put it simply, after Huo Yuhao had killed a person, his body would be enshrouded by some death aura. However, this death aura would only be there for a short while. It would usually disappear after a while. However, Zhongli Wu's death god demon puppet was able to attach itself to this death aura. Because of how the death aura was shapeless and formless, Huo Yuhao would never be able to detect it no matter how strong his spiritual power was. On the other hand, Zhongli Wu would be able to surprise his enemy with an attack from his death god demon puppet. If Huo Yuhao was at his best condition, the surprise attack would have failed. He would simply break free from the immobilization with his soul power. In fact, he could even retaliate with ease. However, the death god demon puppet was exceptionally skilled at timing its surprise attack. After fighting so many battles, Huo Yuhao was already fairly drained. In fact, the insane blow he had released with his ghost-carving blade had almost consumed all of his spiritual power and soul power. If not, how would he be able to kill a Class 9 soul engineer so easily, and shock everyone who was watching the battle? Right now, Huo Yuhao had simply become too weak. He was so weak that Zhongli Wu saw a golden opportunity to attack him. This was, in fact, a great opportunity, as Zhongli Wu succeeded in getting his death god demon puppet to launch a surprise attack on Huo Yuhao. However, he had failed to consider how Huo Yuhao was no longer alone after the challenge was over. He had companions, friends, and most importantly, Tang Wuong. Tang Wuong had willingly sustained a life-threatening injury to block the blow for Huo Yuhao. This bought him precious time. As he threw his fist at the black image, he developed a greater understanding of the power of emotions. The three ultimate Haodong skills lost their effects the moment Tang Wuong had returned to Huo Yuhao's side. However, Huo Yuhao could clearly sense how he was about to lose her. At that instant, his previous feelings of sadness, pain, and longingness for Dong suddenly surged in his heart. The seed of emotion, which was planted in him, had finally sprouted. The fist he had thrown out had contained the essence of the three ultimate Haodong skills. On top of that, the power of emotions had drawn power from Huo Yuhao's emotions, spiritual power, and soul power, as well as Huo Yuhao's grief. All of these powers were concentrated in that single punch. Hence, it was able to smash the death god demon puppet into pieces. After his martial soul has been destroyed, Zhongli Wu instantly felt the pain and damage dealt to his body. This kind of injury was definitely inevitable. Zhongli Wu felt his soul power drop by 2 ranks instantly. On top of that, it would probably take a long time for him to actually recuperate from this injury. After punching the black image, Huo Yuhao was near his limits. Nonetheless, he did not let go of Tang Wuong. Now that the death god demon puppet was dead, the short dagger which was formed from the power of the death god had also disintegrated. However, the intense death aura was still ravaging Tang Wuong's body from within. The purple gold glow on her body was starting to become faint as her face became incredibly pale. Huo Yuhao stared at her as he gritted his teeth. His entire body was now trembling intensely. Wuong. A faint golden light was suddenly emitted from Tang Wuong's forehead. Following which, it projected Huo Yuhao's dreaded golden trident. It was as though Tang Wuong had gained another eye on her forehead. Following which, the image of the golden-haired man reappeared behind Huo Yuhao. Rong Nianbing, what are you trying to do? A cold voice rang in Huo Yuhao's and Tang Wuong's ears. This was a voice that only they could hear. I am not doing anything. I am just trying to find a successor for myself. I think Yuhao is very suitable. He is a person who is honest with himself and the people around him. Most importantly, he is a good young man. In fact, he has already started to develop an understanding of my power of emotions. If he were to continue like this, it won't be long before he truly becomes qualified to take my place. Rong Nianbing. Don't tell me you don't know that I've already chosen him. The cold voice rang again. I really didn't know. Even though I have monitored him, and had seen how you have interacted with him, I have only seen you torture him. You have never given him any guidance or advice. On the other hand, I had even passed my godly seed to him already. I guess I can only say I'm sorry. You were simply too slow, Brother Tang. You dash. The person with the cold voice seemed to have become angered by Rong Nianbing's words. At this instant, Huo Yuhao could no longer hold it any longer. He was overwhelmed by the dizzy sensation, as his mind turned completely blank. However, he did not loosen his grip on Tang Wuong as he fainted with her in his embrace. In the God realm, white clouds enshrouded the tall mountains that encircled the God realm. It seemed as though some sort of spiritual aura was enveloping the entire area, as a mysterious fragrance drifted in the air. There were 2 people standing on top of the mountain. In fact, there was no one else other than the 2 of them. One of them was a man dressed in a long blue robe. He had long blue hair that was so long it touched the ground. He was wielding a golden trident, which was radiating a brilliant golden light. There was another man standing opposite him. However, that man was wearing a white chef's outfit. The only thing missing from his outfit was his hat. He stood there in a relaxed manner, with his arms crossed across his chest. Rong Nianbing, don't even think of leaving if you don't give me a reasonable explanation today. The blue-haired man growled loudly. Rong Nianbing flashed a smile and said, Tang-san, can you stop growling like this? It's really not easy to find someone with good potential like Huo Yuhao. Now that I have found him, I can't just let him go like this, right? Also, I must have misunderstood your intentions. I thought you hated that lad after seeing you stop him from being intimate with your daughter. I can't help but pity him after seeing what you have done to him. You must have been displeased with his background to have done what you did to him. On the other hand, look at what I have done. Now that I have given my godly seat to him, he is now worthy of your daughter. At the end of the day, I am also a tier 1 god. Even though I pale slightly in comparison to you, an actual enforcer, I believe my godly seat is still worth something. You? Tang San stared intensely at Rong Nianbing. Rong Nianbing, do you dare to say that you didn't know what I had in mind? Let's not lie to one another and make things difficult. I will let it go if you take your godly seat back right now. If not, forgive me for being impolite. Rong Nianbing brought his arms to the back of his head before saying, all right, that's enough. Stop acting. Do you really think I don't know what kind of temper you have? You are a good person, and would definitely obey the laws of the God realm. There's no way you can do anything to me since I haven't broken any of the laws. Why don't you just find another successor for yourself? That's easy for you to say, Tang San said coldly. Tell me, where am I going to find someone else? Do you really think anyone can inherit my godly seat? For all these years, all of you have been getting lazier. All of you have been putting more pressure on me. If not for the recent instability within the God realm that required me to reduce my time spent monitoring Huo Yuhao, you would never have had a chance to steal him from me. Rong Nianbing replied, it's impossible for me to take back my godly seat. This kid has already started to understand and comprehend my power of emotions. If I were to take it away from him now, it would only cause irreversible harm to him. His development would definitely be adversely affected. When that happens, even you would not be able to get him to inherit your godly seat. But then I admit I am somewhat at fault here. How about this? Before Huo Yuhao truly becomes worthy enough to be a god, I will help share some of your responsibilities in the God realm. I will only leave to travel after Huo Yuhao is able to shoulder my responsibilities. How does that sound? Tang San let out a sigh as a bitter smile formed on his face. Do you not know that I am actually going after freedom? Rong Nianbing replied, and am I not going after the same thing? At the end of the day, the God realm has only become so unstable after kindness and evil fled. If not for those two shameless God kings who have fled, you would not have had such a tough time in the God realm. Tang San's face started to contort with rage after hearing Rong Nianbing mentioned kindness and evil. Rong Nianbing, I will not let our matter rest just like this. It's true that I can't do anything to you. However, I want you to remember this. Now that you have decided to snatch Huo Yuhao from me, I will stop treating him as my successor. You should know that Wutong is my daughter. I will make sure that he won't be able to be together with my daughter so easily. Tang San vowed viciously. Rong Nianbing was startled by what he had just heard. You can't be serious. Tang San, are you going to go harder on him? I am warning you not to go overboard with this. Tang San let out a cold grunt and said, that will depend on your performance. We can talk more about it after you have fulfilled your promise. Have you not seen how my daughter has gotten hurt for that little rascal? I was still able to do something for her legally by the laws that govern the God realm, because she is my blood kin. However, you would not be able to do anything unless he somehow evokes you again. Rong Nianbing started to frown as he pleaded, Yuhao has led a very tough life. Tang San, can you just spare him for me? Tang San waved his sleeve furiously, as he drifted into the sky and disappeared amongst the clouds. Rong Nianbing's face revealed a frustrated look as he shook his head. He muttered to himself, Yuhao, Yuhao. It's not that I don't want to help you. I am simply out of ideas. You only have yourself to blame for falling in love with his daughter. However, I must admit that it feels great to steal something from Tang San under his nose. Ha 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 ha. Tang San, are we really going to just let him go like this? What Rong Nianbing did is simply unacceptable. Xiao Wu, do you really think I would have lost to him? If I hadn't released the seal I had placed on Huo Yuhao's aura, do you think Rong Nianbing would have been able to sense his existence? What? So you did it on purpose? Why? Weren't you bent on letting Huo Yuhao inherit your godly seat? It's best for him to inherit a godly seat, which is the most suitable for him. Rong Nianbing's godly seat is definitely more suitable for him. This also means that I probably won't be able to give away my godly seat anytime soon. Right now, the God realm is not only unstable, but also seems to be bound for a huge change in the near future. I have scryed from the skies that something big is about to happen, even though I have no idea what exactly it will be. Now that the two God Kings are no longer around, I must hold on to my godly seat to solve this problem. I am afraid we might have to postpone our traveling plans. I am so sorry. Don't say that. As long as we're together, I am already very happy. Stars filled the night sky when Huo Yuhao finally awoke from his deep slumber. There was an inexplicable soreness all over his body, but there seemed to be a lot of liveliness rippling through him at the same time. Huo Yuhao's vitality had recovered as his mind and body healed. His soul power began circulating, and he could tell with a simple look inward that his yin-yang equilibrium soul cores were rotating very stably. Furthermore, his dual soul cores had clearly improved. When Huo Yuhao's yin-yang equilibrium soul cores had first taken shape, their whirlpool-like soul power had been very uneven, and changed with his soul power and spiritual power undulations, and even his breathing. But now, his soul cores were transforming. When his two soul cores' power clashed, the tiny whirlpools of soul power were all the same size. Furthermore, his largest whirlpool from before couldn't compare to his soul power right now. Every whirlpool was also extremely stable, and his soul power condensed into both gold and blue. His spiritual power and his ultimate ice coexisted. Even though Huo Yuhao's mind and body were still fatigued, his soul power had recovered to his peak condition. Furthermore, his soul power had so evidently improved that there was no question that his cultivation had risen once more. This was the result of forcing himself to unleash his potential, and of his dual soul cores gradually integrating and taking shape. His 1 versus 10 stunt wasn't wasted, and he managed to achieve his initial goal. However, his excitement lasted for but a moment. His memory came back, and he immediately thought about what had transpired before he fell unconscious. Huo Yuhao almost immediately bounced to his feet and leapt from his bed. Wutong, how is she? Where is she? Huo Yuhao's spiritual power stretched out with a single thought, and he immediately discovered that he was back in the Sea God's pavilion, and Tang Wutong was in a room not far from his. Huo Yuhao dashed to Tang Wutong's room as quickly as he could. Tang Wutong was in the room, and Xiao was sitting beside her bed and taking care of her. There was nobody else around, and Xiao hurriedly placed her index finger to her mouth as Huo Yuhao came in. Huo Yuhao clenched his fists subconsciously. He was now completely awake. Xiao, how is she? Huo Yuhao whispered. Xiao shook her head softly as she stood up and pulled him out of the room. She stared at Huo Yuhao with a complicated look in her eyes as they stepped out. Huo Yuhao and Tang Wutong's relationship was the most turbulent among their generation of Shrek's 7 monsters. Even their eldest senior brother was back together with Xiao. You have to remain calm, Yuhao. Xiao was very clear on how he felt about Tang Wutong. Huo Yuhao's heart skipped a beat as he took a deep breath. He lowered his voice and said, "Tell me, I'm very calm. At least, is Wutong still alive?" Xiao continued, "Wutong's situation isn't very good. Elder Zhuang has taken a look at her. Death circulates within her body, and this aura of death is something that her soul power cannot dispel. It is already entangled with her soul power and spiritual power, and it has shut her consciousness down. That's why she's in a coma. Nobody can extract that aura of death right now, because doing so can hurt Wutong's body. She can only rely on her own willpower, and she can only recover when her soul power and spiritual power can expel that aura of death from her body." Huo Yuhao pursed his lips tightly. Wutong has fallen into a coma. Back then, Wang Donga fell into a coma when he sent her back to the Clear Sky sect, and now Wutong was in a coma. Was history repeating itself? Huo Yuhao would have no dignity left to face the Clear Sky sect's 2 leaders if he sent her back again. Xiao heaved a sigh and said, "The 2 of you have been unconscious for 3 days. Don't worry, Yuhao, she will definitely recover." Huo Yuhao lowered his voice and asked, "Has the aura of death in her body declined over the past 3 days?" Xiao hesitated for a moment, but she couldn't bear to lie in the end as she shook her head softly. Huo Yuhao closed his eyes painfully as he dashed back into the room and pounced beside Tang Wuong's bed. He held her hands tightly. Tang Wuong's hands were very cold, and her beautiful face was ghastly pale. There wasn't a single hint of color on her face, and her life energy was pitifully weak. Huo Yuhao extended a tiny thread of soul power into Tang Wuong's body, and he immediately understood what Xiao was telling him before. She was right. Nobody could do anything to save Tang Wuong in her current state. Tang Wuong's soul power had become very messy and disoriented. Her purplish-golden soul power was layered with grayish-black colors, and those dark hues had completely integrated into her soul power, and even into her veins. Fortunately, there seemed to be some special force protecting her organs and other vital parts. Otherwise, this aura of death could have already taken her life. Huo Yuhao quickly made an accurate judgment that he couldn't treat Tang Wuong, at least not with his current strength. His best choice would be to take Tang Wuong back to the Clear Sky sect. Only the Clear Sky sect's 2 leaders understood Tang Wuong's cultivation best, and only they would know how to heal her. But I haven't been able to protect her yet again, so how can I face the 2 sect leaders if I go back there? Huo Yuhao didn't know, but he knew that he had to go. What would happen to him was no longer important, because what was important was that Tang Wuong could get better. Huo Yuhao quickly made up his mind. He wasn't like he used to be, and even though his heart was filled with grief and pain, he still chose to stand up resiliently. To be overcome by intense grief was a display of weakness, and he had to be strong. Xiao, can I trouble you to take care of her? I need to deal with some matters before I take her for treatment. Huo Yuhao said to Xiao. Xiao nodded and said, "Don't worry. Elder Xian has made an exception to allow me into the Sea God's Pavilion to look after Wutong. You have contributed greatly to the academy this time, so you can just go ahead and do what you wish to. We will do all we can to help you if you need our help, and we will do our best to help her recover." Yes, Huo Yuhao nodded before he stepped out of the room. Elder Xian, Yang Xiaozhe, and Xian Lina were already waiting quietly outside. Elder Xian, Huo Yuhao's voice was trembling a little when he saw Elder Xian, and the grief in his heart surged. Elder Xian patted him on the shoulder. "Don't be sad, Yuhao. I'm sorry that we haven't been able to protect you and Wutong." Huo Yuhao shook his head. Elder Xian, has the Sunmoon Empire's army retreated? Elder Xian nodded and replied, "They're gone, and it seems like they're retreating into the Heavenly Soul Empire's original territory. I don't know where they're going afterwards, because their lockdown on surveillance is very tight." Huo Yuhao said, "According to our deal, she will leave the academy alone for now. Elder Xian, there are some things I have to give you which will guarantee the academy's safety. Can you ask the Star Luo Empire and Douling Empire's elites to return home as quickly as possible so that they can prepare to deal with the Sunmoon Empire's invasion? The Sunmoon Empire has taken quite a hit from what has transpired. I have destroyed one of their beast-rank Soul Engineer legions, and several of their Class 9 Soul Engineers have perished in battle. The Holy Ghost Church is also severely hurt, and they'll need some time to adjust and regain their strength." Elder Xian took the storage ring that Huo Yuhao handed him and asked, "What's this?" Huo Yuhao answered, "This contains some Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells that I snatched from the Imperial Dragon Legion's commander, along with some other soul tools. There are a total of 15 Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells inside. If they are all fired at the same time, you can annihilate everything within thousands of square kilometers. These cannon shells will have no problem ensuring the academy's safety." Elder Xian exhaled deeply. Huo Yuhao had truly solved one of the academy's major problems all by himself. With these stationary soul cannon shells, Shrek Academy no longer needed the Star Luo and Douling Empire's elites to guard the city. They could then use their strength directly against the Sunmoon Empire. Furthermore, even though Huo Yuhao's 1 versus 10 battle wasn't completed in the end, he had emerged victorious across 7 battles. He had severely injured their opponent's powerful individuals, and dealt an unprecedented blow to the Sunmoon Empire's morale and momentum. The Sunmoon Empire's army had been momentarily repelled. What are you going to do next, Yuhao? Wutong's situation, Yang Xiao's voice seemed a little gloomy. Huo Yuhao replied, Dean Yang, I wish to treat Sister Xiaotao first, and then I'll take Wutong for treatment. Only her family knows how to treat her. I don't know when I'll return after I leave, but I wish all of you can forgive me. Wutong's life is everything to me. Xian Lina said, You're a good kid, Yuhao. Feel free to do whatever you need to. I like your personality of courageous love and emotion, and you've done enough for the academy. Elder Xian patted Huo Yuhao's shoulder once more. Your reputation has been cemented with this battle. Come back as soon as you can, because the academy needs you. Yes. I will return as soon as possible once Wutong's situation stabilizes. Huo Yuhao bid his farewells to Elder Xian and the 2 deans as he left the Sea God's pavilion. He kowtowed in front of the golden tree once more before he began to chant further away, and opened his spectral gate. Elder Xian and the 2 deans looked on as the enormous black gate opened, and Huo Yuhao vanished into the darkness. Yang Xiaozhe heaved a faint sigh as he watched the gate that was swiftly closing. He has truly grown up. He still knows what's important, and he still knows what he should do even in a time like this. I was a far cry from him when I was his age. Xian Lina laughed coldly. Especially about your emotions and your life. Yang Xiaozhe's mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything in response. He could never win an argument against Xian Lina about this. Elder Xian said, Xiaozhe, gather the 3 empires' commanders immediately. We will open a meeting as soon as possible to devise a strategy against the Sunmoon Empire. We can relax a little because the Sunmoon Empire has retreated, but we to make the right move afterward. Otherwise, the War God Empress will astonish us once again. This video will end here.